Hello, I am Patrick Collie with Keystone Elder Law. This is Keynotes, a series of conversations about issues affecting the elderly, people with special needs, and veterans of the armed forces. One recurring issue for families who have an older family member living with them, often with family caregivers, is getting them out to doctor appointments and other medical appointments that can provide or can result in not only scheduling problems, but also potential safety issues with lifting the older person and transporting them safely to where they need to go. But there's a solution. I am very excited to be joined today by Dan Durr of Integrated Medical Transport, who provides exactly the service that these people need to relieve them of both the scheduling problem, but also all of the safety issues and making sure that their loved one is taken care of and gets to the appointments they need. Dan, thank you for joining me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
So tell me about your company. What is the makeup of the company? What is its general mission? And where are you providing services in Pennsylvania?
Okay, so I can start with just a real brief history. 3 years ago, we started. I have two partners. So there's three of us that own this. We were in healthcare, nursing home business, and saw a real need for a quality transportation company. Some of the experiences we had with hired transportation companies were not so good. And we absolutely knew we could provide a better service. Currently, we provide services from New Jersey to Franklin County and from Maryland line to 𝐊𝐿𝐴𝐷𝐿 County. So basically the eastern part of the corner of the state. We are currently in the progress of expanding. In 8 to 12 months, our goal is to be statewide. So we will be expanding. The pandemic has actually given us an opportunity to really look at ourselves and know what our strengths are and where we can grow to provide more service. The other thing that we do, just the basics of what we do, we provide ambulance service, advanced life support, and basic life support. We also provide wheelchair transports and a thing called a non-medical stretcher. Now that's kind of new to most people, but it's a stretcher transport for people that can't sit in a wheelchair, but their insurance doesn't necessarily qualify to pay for advanced life support or basic life support that's provided in an ambulance. So, stretcher is kind of the in-between. What oftentimes patients run into is they can't sit in a wheelchair, but their insurance doesn't qualify to pay for an ambulance run. So they're left with the situation where if they get in an ambulance, there's going to be a hefty bill, and I can't sit in a wheelchair. So what's in between that I could use? And that's exactly what this is. It's a place for them to be able to lay down on their back without the cost of ambulance, because medically, oftentimes they don't meet medical necessity, and their insurance disqualifies the payment because of that. So, we tried to meet the need of everyone that might need transported.
And you described a very large service area. So, I think we'll get into more detail about this, but my understanding is you are transporting people not only for short distances within that service area, but even long distance if it becomes necessary. Did I get that right?
So our licensing, I'm glad you brought that up. Our licensing allows us to pick up people in that area, but we can transport anywhere in the state right now. We also have an out-of-state license that we can transport people. If we pick them up in that service area, we can transport them to Maryland, for example, or New York or New Jersey, wherever they might want to go.
Let's start sort of right at the outset. If there's somebody who's new to this whole concept, why would a family consider medical transport, especially if maybe they've been running an older family member to doctor appointments, or what is the motivation, or what's the value that you provide for families who are caregivers for an older person?
So there's a couple of things that we see routinely. We see their children are working, and while that is good for them to be a part of their loved one's care. It's not always possible. Most people do have to go to work at some point, and this provides another way for them to get their loved ones to the medical care they need without them being directly there. We also, a lot of times it becomes too much for children. If they have steps in their house, or if there's difficulty in getting the wheelchair into a car or transferring that patient into a vehicle, that becomes difficult. And, why not use people that do it every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? The other thing that we see is, sometimes where they were using public transportation, their condition has worsened and they can no longer take a curb-to-curb service. Most public transportation has you going from curb to curb, and it's up to you after you get out of the public transportation to make it into your house. We're a little different in that regards. We go right into the house. We put, what we always say is we put them in their easy chair, and when we leave, they have their TV switch in their hand and they're ready to go. So, it's different in that sense, that personal touch. Quite honestly, I'm, by education, I'm a licensed social worker. And this was a way for us to really help people in a meaningful way. My partners and I come from a blue-collar background. Our parents are not well-to-do, and we knew that we could do this more affordably and with the needs of the people in mind. Not to say that our competitors don't do that also, but some of their models don't allow it for various reasons. But what we knew is that we could provide a very personal service where people, our drivers, are engaged with them. I can tell you that, just not to veer off this subject completely, but our drivers are very invested in their patients. We know if people would pass, it's not uncommon for my drivers to attend their funerals. They form that relationship over time. So, my drivers get very involved with their patients, and, they know, and that's part of what makes us different.
That's great. And in one, you touched on some very important logistical issues, not just curb to curb, but going into the house, dealing with stairs, maybe dealing with wheelchairs and other durable medical equipment that the person might have. But one thing I bet you see that I know we see, maybe increasingly, and maybe this is just a sign of the times, but at Keystone Elder Law, we often get the call from the child who's trying to take care of the parent. Well, the child's in California and the parent is in Pennsylvania, and they're doing their best, but children move away and they move around the country, and they're going to do whatever they can for their parent, but they're just not on the front lines. They're not on the scene, and it becomes logistically impossible for them to fly to Pennsylvania or drive long distances to be there with the frequency that the parent will need. So you're definitely there as a solution for the out-of-town children who are looking out for a parent who maybe has health issues that are rapidly declining.
Sure. You're pointing out the plight of the sandwich generation. I have children that I'm taking care of that are my children, and then taking care of my parents. And oftentimes that's a lot to ask, that sandwich generation.
Yes, it absolutely is. So, we talked about, how your drivers develop a relationship, and, they go with the people they serve, and they go into the house. For some people, that requires building up a level of trust. And so what can you tell people about the background checks and the security that goes into your drivers, the training that they have, so that they don't have any reservation about having this person come into their home and help them in and out of the easy chair and so forth?
I'm glad you asked. So first and foremost, when we interview people, we hire based on kindness. Everything else that happens inside that van, as far as loading wheelchairs, what we offer within driving the van, I can teach, but I can't teach kindness. So when we do interviews, we really look for examples of where they've been kind, showed their kindness, the root fundamental thing that drives everything that we're talking about. So in terms of background checks, that's not enough just to have kindness. We drug test them, we child abuse test them, we state police check test them, we driver record test them, and COVID-19 test them. So, we want to know who we're dealing with. We do an extensive background check on them because, they're very autonomous. They're out there with our vehicles. Although I say that, there is some safety guards that we have in place. We can shut off vehicles from our main hub. By the way, in 3 years that we've been in business, never had to do that once.
That's good.
But it is a nice safety option. The other thing that we have is everything is GPS monitored. So at any given moment, I can tell you where we have a fleet of about 60, 70 vehicles. I can tell you where any of them are at any given moment in time. Just by looking at our screens in our dispatch area. So, that's very helpful on another way, not just a security thing, but if, we get calls routinely from people that are meeting our patients at the doctor's. Hey, I'm at the dentist. Where's mom? I can go on in 2 seconds and tell them, well, she's 2 blocks from you. The vehicle's on its way. It's a very nice feature that way. The other thing that our technology does for us too is when somebody does a reservation with us, reserves a trip, we punch in their cell phone number and they get a notification of when the trip's coming, just a reminder. So they'll get a 24-hour reminder. Mom's going to the dentist on such and such a date at such and such a time. And mom is, 2 hours from then, we give another reminder. And then when we pick them up, there's another reminder that comes in that says, we've picked up your mother and we're heading to the dentist. So, trying to loop in family, family is their biggest support, most people's biggest support. And trying to loop the family into their care every step of the way becomes crucial. Now, the other thing is if they don't want to meet them at the dentist, we allow passengers to drive with us for free. So if you want to get in the van with us and ride with mom to the dentist, more than fine. We encourage that. As a social worker, what I said rings true to me over and over is, that's the biggest support. And if I can encourage their togetherness through just a free ride by sitting in our van, I'll do it every day.
Sure. And I mean, if the appointment that the person is heading to is stressful, that's going to go a long way to not only for their mental well-being, but also for their physical health, just to keep them calm and know that they have support. So that's great. And I'm guessing, going back a little bit to what you've already covered in terms of the type of stretchers or wheelchairs and everything that you use, I'm guessing that your employees are CPR trained. They have all kinds of training that somebody who's just trying to run their parent to medical appointments in between going to work probably does not have. So, could you talk a little bit about that kind of training just for pure safety and health?
There's 2 levels of training. For the ambulance crews, they have to be certified as either an emergency medical technician, an EMT, or a paramedic. We employ both, and both are certified within their licensing. Van drivers are a little different, but we didn't think that no training was good. They are trained in CPR. They are trained in first aid. They are trained in defensive driving. They're trained in customer service to recognize that a patient is not the only customer, that the family members are also their customer. We have, just a little bit beyond that, from time to time, we have additional trainings based on need. Most recently, we have stair chairs, which are a mechanism by which it helps people to safely navigate stairs at wherever they might be, and usually their homes. So, of course, we had to train people in stair chair training, because, it's not enough to have good equipment. You have to know how to use it correctly every time. So, it becomes crucially important that they have training. We spend a week, which is unheard of in our industry, either mentoring or classroom training. I will tell you that about half our drivers don't make it through our training because we see something in the middle of the training that gives us cause to pause. And, you know, we just don't want to take those kinds of risks. You know, people's life and well-being is at stake. So it's very crucial that we weed out anybody that might potentially be a danger to people.
So we've talked about the focus on your employees and what you look for in terms of kindness and patience and developing a relationship with people, but also the technical aspects of their training. And, you know, let's talk about your fleet, because you can't, I mean, I'm thinking of, you know, on the one hand, the family caregiver who tries to bring a wheelchair bound parent and put them in the Honda Civic or whatever they have. In order to accommodate a stair chair or a stretcher, I mean, you have to have vehicles of various shapes and sizes, and you know, they must be designed in a way that is specifically has this population in mind, so that you're providing not only greater comfort and ease of the putting the person in and out of the vehicle, but just safety, so that the wheelchair or stretcher doesn't move around. So tell me about the fleet of vehicles that you use.
So we start off with brand new Toyota Siennas. That's what we buy. We send them away to be altered, their frames altered to be extra wide in the back. We have the widest commercial vehicle available. It's 39 inches wide. So even, you know, oftentimes what I hear from our competitors is they don't have the equipment to accommodate bariatric patients. And so what happens typically in that scenario is, if they don't have a wheelchair van that'll accommodate a bariatric patient, they put them in an ambulance. Well, just to think that through a second, bariatric condition does not make medical necessity. So because they're bariatric, they end up in an ambulance, don't meet medical certification to be in an ambulance, and they get stuck with that bill. So, you know, our custom-made vehicles allow people to travel at the appropriate level of care, which, you know, is substantially cheaper to drive in a wheelchair van than an ambulance. The other thing that they have is, you know, we watched for many years people being scared of those, and I call them outside elevators. Those elevator lifts on most wheelchair vans, we don't have them. What our vehicles do is they fold out a ramp that's only 1.5 feet off the ground. So there's never a mechanical failure. There's never the shaking that comes with those outside elevators. You know, we just didn't want to scare people. I've seen people be very uncomfortable on them. And so we have a ramp system that is not high off the ground, is extra wide, and they'll accommodate. I've never seen a wheelchair that we have not been able to put in our wheelchair vans. Additionally, these new Toyota Siennas have XM radio and satellite radios, so people have a choice of 100 different stations. If you want to listen to country music, if you want to listen to classical, jazz, whatever it might be, it's up to the passenger. We serve a cold beverage on the way. If they're medically allowed, you know, people that typically are in dialysis or going for an operation are not permitted to have liquids before those things. But short of those things, we provide a beverage on the way. We want it to be a pleasant event. Per your discussion earlier, sometimes those medical appointments are not so good. You know, there's bad news being given. And so, you know, if I can make that a lighter, more pleasant trip on the way there, I'll do it every day.
Fantastic. Dan, how can people find Integrated Medical Transport? How do they get in touch with you? I'm sure this talk about your services is going to be like the answer to a prayer they didn't know they were praying for a lot of people. So if this sounds like something that would make life an awful lot easier and safer for families out there, how can they find you?
They can find us on our website. It's www.integratedmedicaltransport.com, or they can call us directly, 717-590-8179. Again, that's 717-590-8179. And then push option 1. There's always a human available. We operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just by pushing the option 1 will connect you with a human being.
Wonderful. Dan, thank you so much.
One
Go ahead.
last thing I wanted to mention. With the pandemic upon us, we've instituted some additional safety measures around COVID-19 I want to make people aware of. We clean the vehicles down between every trip. So they get scrubbed down, they get disinfected. My drivers wear PPE, protective gear, more not so they don't catch it, but so they don't convey it to a passenger. We have taken some steps. All the drivers are tested now. So there is some, as much as we can be assured in today's world, there are some assurances within our model that we are COVID free and that we work to not contact that virus.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because this goes back to everything we talked about with the trust factor of going into people's homes. You're adding that kind of value and that kind of safety, but of course, if you're bringing COVID into the house, that would diminish all of the value that you provide. So the fact that you're taking that seriously is so important. And that's something that we've thought a lot about too. We don't, like you, we interact with an awful lot of older people who might be vulnerable to COVID, but also we interact with a lot of caregivers, so people going in and out of facilities. So we just don't want to be the cross-pollinator of the pandemic virus. So I'm glad you mentioned that. It's part of our responsibility when we're dealing with the population we serve. So Dan, you've given your contact information, and I'll be sure to post that along with this video. And I thank you so much. I think this is going to really cause a lot of people to realize there's help out there that they didn't know was available. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having us on and allowing us to talk about our service. Thank you.